It's the start of summer vacation and a dynasty. It's Memorial Day 99, Blazers at Spurs. This is Remember That Game, the podcast about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick, and my guest is Eric Michael Garcia, Washington Bureau Chief for The Independent and author of We're Not Broken, Changing the Autism Conversation. Eric, you were there in San Antonio as the Spurs graduated from a large class of perennially snake-bitten franchises in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
How important was this team to you as a kid around the turn of the century?
Oh man, no. So like some backstory. So I was born in Chicago in 1990, and so understandably, and look, guess where I get my middle name? My middle name is Michael. I was a Bulls fanatic. The first words I ever said were the Bulls Pete. But when we moved around a lot when I was a kid, and I was born in Chicago. We moved to Florida, Wisconsin, Northern California. Then we wound up for a little bit in San Antonio, Texas. And this was around the time, if you remember, there was the Michael Jordan had retired the year before. There was, and then my dad is from San Antonio. My dad's a native of San Antonio, Texas. So we were living back there. We were living there at the time. So my dad had just gotten a job there, and my grandmother lived in San Antonio. And it was kind of like, I didn't really have any ties to the Bulls after that. And then just being in San Antonio when they made that run, you have to remember that was with that was around the time when there was all this talk about who's going to be the new Michael Jordan. That was when Kobe Bryant had just been drafted. That was when, anybody who watched The Last Dance remembers that like little exchange with Kobe and Michael Jordan. And then Tim Duncan had just won Rookie of the Year, which people forget. And I think that just being in San Antonio, the buses would say "Go Spurs, go." The HEBs in San Antonio. HEB is a very big grocery chain in San Antonio, Texas. All of them had "Go Spurs, go." Taco Cabanas, which is a very popular fast food franchise in San Antonio, had "Go Spurs, go" specials. So it was just like Spurs mania was sweeping, and you got the feeling that okay, this is a city. Again, I was a kid. Like okay, this is a city that stuck by the Spurs during really, really bad times. Coach Popovich had just become coach like a few years before. And then David Robinson finally found like a complimentary partner in Tim Duncan. That was the talk of the Twin Towers. And I think that the thing that I just liked about it is that it was just the mania. And then at the same time, that was the same year that my mom went to the hospital for a gallbladder surgery. So like one of the things that we just did when we were in the hospital with my mom was just watch Spurs games. So it was a combination of bonding with my mom, my dad being a San Antonio Spurs fan for his whole life, and finally seeing the Spurs, reach the zenith. And then on top of that, just being in the city and seeing the city so excited.
Yeah, and it would be pretty lively, I imagine, for the Memorial Day miracle.
Yes.
Nice cap to a 3-day weekend with Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals between Portland and San Antonio, or the T-Blazers and the Spurs, as the Kyron read on the NBA on NBC intro.
Yes.
Were you already on summer break then? And what does that conjure for you, that old NBC intro?
That was, any kid who grew up in the 90s remembers the Roundball rock. Like, I still think that is like the greatest sports music intro, like trailer thing of all time. Of course, anybody who watched the Bulls during that time, remembers it. And you had Bob Costas as doing the call, and then who was the other one?
Doug Collins.
Doug Collins was the additional one.
He was great
the commentary on that game is just top notch.
Yeah.
If you go back, like even if you're just, I was doing some house cleaning while I was watching the game, and I was listening to it, and just the storytelling that Bob Costas and Doug Collins do on that commentary is just incredible.
That was S tier work from Collins and Costas there. And so I guess we'll be back on the NBA and NBC, and we'll have Michael Jordan involved too coming up in 2025. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be great. Because Warner gave up the rights to the NBA. And then now you have Inside the NBA going on to ESPN, but you can have Michael as a color commentator now that he's no longer an owner because he sold the Hornets. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to see. And we're getting Roundball Rock back. So
yeah, hopefully it ends up best of both worlds. The Charles Barkley, Ernie Johnson, Shaq and Kenny can all do their thing. But everyone can enjoy. We can enjoy that show, but we also get that NBC intro.
Yes.
And we got it here in 1999. I used to live actually south of Austin the beginning of the Spurs season. I try to get some of the tricolor here. That's my buddy's album cover shirt. The Spurs shades of black, and then got the pink from the tricolor. They had the teal and the orange in the tricolor as well. Do you miss seeing those colors at midcourt at the Alamo Dome?
Constantly. That was the Alamo. We went to a few games that season in the Alamo Dome, my family and I, and it was so electric, and it was so. I mean, I know they now have a new arena, but like the Alamo Dome to me was and is one of the great arenas to watch basketball.
Yeah, and but I imagine some anxiety and tension, considering just down I-10. Hakeem outfoxed the Admiral during the 90s.
Yes.
And there's a lot of baggage coming into the series with the Spurs not having escaped the Western Conference.
Yeah, again, I was going back and I was looking at there was a ranking of teams that had the easiest route to the Eastern Conference. I mean, to the finals, and the Spurs got 24th. But you have to remember that was because I'm trying to think back to the drafts during that time, because they played the Timberwolves, and that was with a very young Kevin Garnett. They beat the Lakers before with Shaq and Kobe were really starting to gel. I know everybody talks a lot about their tensions, but when Shaq and Kobe were on one, they were on one. There was literally no better dynamic duo. And then they get to the Western Conference. Game 1, the pressure was on, and the Spurs actually got the better of the Blazers. And they talk about it like there was just the Blazers just didn't make the shots that they needed to.
Yeah, and at the end of game 1 there, Pop with a great switch. Rasheed Wallace was cooking Tim Duncan in game 1, but Pop switches the Admiral onto Rasheed for the clinching possession. They get the stop, force the Rasheed Wallace miss. And a team that seems like they're better at closing. Again, Houston across the state won 2 titles that decade. Yes. Mario Elie came over from the Rockets. The season didn't start great. 6-8. Mario Elie's talking about how the Spurs are nice men, but maybe a little too nice, or maybe not hard enough in closeout situations. Yeah,
again, and you have to remember this is also the year of the NBA strike, the player strike. Which is another reason why a lot of people kind of put an asterisk near that championship. But I say that's ridiculous. But you're right. Yeah, that was the Houston Rockets. Hakeem Olajuwon had won 2 titles. This was the time of Clyde Drexler. The West becomes a powerhouse, as opposed to the rest of the 90s when the East was really where it was at, where you had the New York Knicks, the Chicago Bulls, the Boston Celtics were pretty good back then. But this is really the West becomes, and this is going to be a precursor for the rest of the 2000s, where you have the Los Angeles Lakers, you have the Spurs, and then later on in the 2010s, of course, you have the Golden State Warriors. But this is the beginning of the Spurs winning 5 NBA championships, and of course, Coach Greg, the beginning of Coach Greg Popovich becoming the winningest NBA coach of all time.
Yeah, a stacked Western Conference in the 90s, despite the Bulls, vexing them in those 6 title runs. But Mario Elie had been on a number of those actually very good teams, upsetting the Spurs. He's there for the 7-2 upset with Golden State in 91. Yes. He's on the Blazers in 93. They got the Spurs, and then the 6-1 upset at the hands of the Rockets in 95. Western Conference Finals. But you start off here. Sean Elliott hits a three, go up 8-6. You're already getting a good looks off of the rotations for the Trailblazers, trying to deal with the twin towers as they're calling them down low.
Yes.
Did this run already start to feel a little different for you, given you had Duncan and Robinson creating tough matchups this time?
Yeah, it did feel very different. And I think one of the most important things to remember during that, in the first half, Avery Johnson actually didn't make a single basket, if you remember, in the first half. And he just keeps up, but then in a sideline interview, he just says, I'm going to keep shooting. I'm going to keep shooting. I'm going to keep shooting. And he does. And then it's important to remember, because the Blazers, they have Rasheed Wallace, they have Cato, they have Brian Griffin.
Brian Grant.
Yeah, Brian Grant. And then they have Sabonis. Yeah, Sabonis, who had played in Europe before. And they have
player of the year,
and then they have one of my favorite North Carolina Tar Heels, Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah. And Jermaine O'Neal just sitting on the bench.
Yes, exactly. Jermaine O'Neal had been sitting on the bench. He'd gone straight from high school. That was back when you could go from high school to the pros, because that was around the time that Kobe Bryant went from straight from high school to the pros. A few years later, of course, LeBron James goes from high school to the pros. But Jermaine O'Neal is there. Damon Stoudemire is also on that team. It is the Portland Trailblazers had every right to be in the Western Conference Finals that season.
Absolutely stacked team. They would have two heartbreaking finals in a row. In this one and the following year, Game 7 against the Lakers, they blow a 15-point fourth quarter lead.
Yes.
So that's tough. But here, the Spurs put them in tough position. They do, as mentioned, a great job. Costas and Collins in the pregame, showing how in Game 1 that Robinson and Duncan could just hunt matchups, because Brian Grant, good career, but he's 6'9", and so one of them is they're going high-low, and then finding who can seal off Grant in the paint. Would you like to see Wemby find someone to revive the Twin Towers with?
I absolutely would. I mean, I think that you're starting to see it. I think it's going to be interesting to see what's the new coach's name? Hold on. It's going to bug me. So Mitch Johnson, I would like to see Mitch Johnson do better. I think that they've got some good draft picks these last few years. But I actually saw Wemby last year when he played the Wizards, and it was, seeing Victor Wembanyama play is a feat of is just watching someone as a feat of nature. Of course, I watched the Olympics last year when they played France, when the U.S. played France, and it very much felt like we saw LeBron and Steph and all them playing against Wemby. It did feel kind of very passing the torch. It felt very Michael versus Kobe '98 All-Star game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, the passing of the torch, definitely the NBA in that stage right now. Some of the older players, they're most centrally marketing, but it seems like it's about time to start getting behind some of the younger guys who are just probably going to revolutionize the game in their own ways, including Wemby. Here early, it's very tight, much like Game 1. Someone who could have revolutionized the game if he was able to make it over from Europe. He's a 6-time European Player of the Year, Arvydas Sabonis. He's having trouble with David Robinson. Robinson is keeping them within a bucket. Robinson gets one at the elbow and then just blows by Sabonis, and then stuffs Sabonis at the other end. So keeping it to 10-8. So Blazers will have a nice second quarter, but keeping close here. Is there anyone you had more admiration for in the league growing up than David Robinson?
Okay, I'm going to say something. Every day during the Spurs playoff run, I wore my David Robinson jersey, and my mom and my grandma would wash that Robinson jersey the night of, so I could wear it the next day. During that entire playoff run, David Robinson to me just symbolized. He had, I think, especially after my hero had been Michael Jordan, who of course we all know has a gambling problem. likes his tequila, likes drinking and smoking. I think that just the idea of David Robinson, I think my mom especially liked that. I like David Robinson because he was a Christian. He was a Navy. He was an Annapolis alum, but also I think that it was. It was so rare, and it still is kind of rare to have a center, especially a center that of that height, who could just be as athletic and who was big but also fast. He wasn't great at shooting at the perimeter, and that was where they really needed Sean Elliott. But just the ability, just his pure athleticism, I think especially you see just how unique and special he was to the Spurs after he retired, when Duncan needed to rely on Parker and Ginobili. You really see just how sui generis David Robinson was once he leaves the Spurs, once he retires.
Yeah, and great, overlap of eras there. They had Tim Duncan coming in the 97 draft just when they needed him. And then, of course, you mentioned earlier that it was a tough time for the Spurs, especially late 80s. Robinson drafted early or drafted, but this has been the first couple of years of his career fulfilling his duty with the Navy.
Yes.
And then his rookie season, 1990, wins Rookie of the Year, biggest improvement year over year in NBA history to that point. Another good rookie season, though, came from Sean Elliott, who...
Yes.
Yeah.
Sean Elliott was so essential to the team. It's funny. Sean Elliott is one of those things. I remember one time, right after they had won the championship, we waited outside a car dealership to go see Sean Elliott's and do photographs with him. So I got to meet Sean Elliott after that championship run. And this was right after he had the kidney surgery.
So, folks, he's playing with kidney disease during this game.
Yeah, he's playing with kidney disease during this game. And again, the thing to take into account is that in the first half, when they have an 18-point lead at one point, or the Blazers do, it's an obscene amount. And also take into account that outside it's the San Antonio summer. And for those who don't know, San Antonio summer is blazing hot. It was literally 101 degrees outside.
And inside there's smoke on the court in the first quarter because of the pyrotechnics.
Yes, because of again, it's San Antonio. People love the military. So the pyrotechnics, my grandfather is buried at Fort Sam Houston, out in San Antonio. My grandfather was a paratrooper, jumped out of planes during World War II. So San Antonio is a big military city, and so you have the smoke all over the court, and Bob Costas remarks about it, and it is so. We weren't at that game, but we went to some of the other playoffs games. I'd have to go back and check with my dad, but it is so, because of that, it is so damn hot inside of the Alamo Dome, and the whole time you could hear it on. You could hear it in the. I listened to the game with headphones on. You could hear the crowd cheering is almost distorting the volume when you're listening to it, or that you're hearing the boos, or you're hearing the go Spurs go, or the defenses, all in that first half. And the other thing to take into account is that, again, we go to game one where they just decide to box out David Robinson, and they decide to just completely block out Tim Duncan, and it works. It completely works. During that time, they just prevent. Robinson misses a free throw here and there. Duncan doesn't do that great in free throws as well. So.
Yeah, and Sabonis, he's got those old knees, much later part of his career, but he does help the Blazers run out, as you mentioned, eventually to an 18-point lead. And it begins the second half with a 3 and a steal. Sabonis is on pace for a triple-double at that point. Stoudemire has a jumper. That's an 18-point lead in the third quarter, 52-34. At that moment where you're like, oh no, this is happening again.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh my God, this is going again. This is going to happen. again, I could barely watch with this, but my dad and I are watching. My dad, my sister, and I are watching at home. And again, it's Memorial Day. It's right after school has ended. Last day of school is like the week before, and you're just like, oh God, this is And again, the fever at the elementary school at Encino Park Elementary School in San Antonio, Texas, and Encino Point, California, Texas is like is just so is so electric, and you just see. And then you just see, oh my goodness, they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose. They can't shoot. And again, Avery Johnson just doesn't connect, and it's just like shot after shot after shot. You're just kind of like, stop trying to shoot past to Sean Elliott.
He couldn't buy one at that point, and then. But sure enough, the Sean Elliott, the player that the Spurs had traded in the early '90s for Dennis Rodman, and then he has kidney issue in Detroit. Eventually, Popovich takes over and says, "No, we're getting Sean Elliott back."
Yeah.
He hit the 3 to spark a 17-2 run. Were you looking to him to get you guys out of the mud at that point?
Yes. And then there's that one part where, like, literally right before Sean Elliott pops that 3, where Doug Collins says it's all on Sean Elliott, and then Sean Elliott pops that 3 out from the perimeter, and Costas is like, you can go and coach. And then that begins. At one point, they do like a 17-2 run, and then the other point of it is that because in the first half the Spurs just couldn't get any rebounds. Or anytime the Blazers miss, and again because Sabonis is so big, he's able to get those rebounds, and then they just hit their rebounds, and then the Blazers just can't hit their free throws. And the thing that blows my mind, I went back and I watched the game, and then I went and I watched the entire, like a super cut of the Memorial Day Miracle. The surprising thing is how few shots Tim Duncan and David Robinson contribute to that run. It's almost entirely Mario Elie, Sean Elliott, Avery Johnson, some from Malik Rose, but it's mostly but like Duncan and Robinson contribute a few free throws, but they're not the main contributing factors in that one.
Yeah, interestingly enough, with Duncan 11 shots, Dave Robinson 10 shots, Avery Johnson 17 shots. The Blazers had a game plan.
Yeah, they had a game plan. They were going to shut out the Twin Towers. They were going to shut out Robinson and Duncan. And what was funny is that initially, and for those who don't know, Duncan and Robinson initially didn't gel. Duncan was very quiet. He was very, as we know. In fact, there's one moment where Duncan makes, he makes a 2, and he kind of pumps his fist, and I'm like, wait, Tim Duncan showing emotion? And for those who don't know, Tim Duncan just doesn't show emotion. So I was like, going back, I kind of rewound it. Wait, like Tim Duncan's like showing emotion. But that's the point when they really, really start to gel. And the other thing that I also want to flag is that this is how also I kind of got into journalism, was the San Antonio Express News was the newspaper in San Antonio, and every week they had a poster of one of the members of that team, and so every week we would get the San Antonio Express News. So I got all the posters that year, and I posted them all up in my room, and that really begins my love affair with newspapers.
Oh my gosh, that's great! And you cover the reconciliation bill that was going on in recent weeks, and they passed the party line vote right before.
Yeah, the vote-a-rama and the rule of being open for like 6 hours and all that.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens to if it's 1 or 2 or however many million Texans have something happen to their healthcare or not. But would you have liked to see Popovich run maybe in 2018? He's the type of person
I've said this on Twitter multiple times, that in 2018 they should have run Coach Popovich, because I think a lot of people know about Coach Popovich. Very similar to Duncan, he's very stoic. When he retired early this year, and people were just posting the best of his sideline interviews, like they're shooting more, we're not. It was almost a fool's errand to try to get him to talk on sideline interviews. But obviously, for those who don't know, he's a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. He's an Annapolis graduate. No, he's Air Force. Yeah, I think he's at Annapolis. Then he served in the military. He spoke Russian, and I think that's really kind of the thing that I always said about Popovich is that he was incredibly patriotic, and he still is very patriotic. And I think that is why to him, and for those, and of course, like later on, the Spurs would just get international teams where they would get Ginobili from Spain and Tony Parker from France and Patty Mills from Australia, and of course now Wemby from France. I think that he just sees. I think he finds Trump personally offensive to all of these kind of values that he holds dear as a U.S. veteran. And also, of course, he's responsible for recruiting Becky Hammon, the first female coach in the NBA. And I joked that in 2018 he should have run against Ted Cruz, or he should have run against Cornyn in 2020. And I'm only half kidding.
Yeah, and the Medicaid parts will conveniently go into effect right after 2026 midterms.
Yes.
But 2018 midterms may be a slightly different timeline if Popovich is someone you can cover in the Senate.
Yeah, no, it'd be funny because
anyways.
Yeah, it'd be funny if covering him in the halls of the Senate, just because I know that he wouldn't say a damn thing. Just like it'd be like, what's the status of the votes? We don't have the votes. We're going to pass it. They're going to, or it's going to fail. I knew it would be a fool's errand, but it would still be fun. But I mean, you could, at least he would never filibuster. And also the point about with Texas is that, like, the thing to take into account is because Texas has an expanded Medicaid, there are some counties in Texas that just don't have rural hospitals anymore. They're just like where you literally have to go one or two counties over to go to a hospital. And the thing about Texas, of course, is that it's a big damn state. So you just have to drive a lot to get to a hospital sometimes.
Yeah. And back in 1999, Medicaid not nearly as expanded, as we're pre 2010 right now.
You know who's the governor of Texas at the time, don't you? George W. Bush. Getting ready. He's getting ready to run for president against John McCain.
Right. Yeah. So you probably have that element. You have Spurs fever. You have Republican Party and the Bush family kicking the tires on a W run. Was that like something you're consciously aware of at the time?
Yeah, my parents were Republicans at the time. My mom became a Democrat later. But yeah, no, it was definitely something, because when I was a kid, and obviously I wrote a whole book about autism. I'm autistic myself. I actually got diagnosed with autism when we were what was then called Asperger's syndrome when we were living in Texas. There was this doctor by the name of, because we were living in Wisconsin when I first started the diagnostic process, and then I started getting special ed accommodations, and we were living in Northern California. But it was finally when we were living in Texas, there was this guy by the name of John Seals who ran a clinic, and he's still practicing to this day. I checked it out. And he got me screened for what was then called Asperger's syndrome, and now is under the autism spectrum disorder part. And of course, George W. Bush, when he was, this is one thing I'll say about George W. Bush. I got the best special education in my life when I was living in Texas. I got all the accommodations, all the services I needed, all that, because George W. Bush, of course, is the son of George Herbert Walker Bush, who signed the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that was just a big priority for him, was special education and education as a whole. Because he wanted, of course, if you remember, like compassionate conservatism, which was very different from like Newt Gingrich kind of scorched earth politics. And it was like compassionate conservatism was like using limited government principles to help people succeed in life. And like education was a big part of it. And that was what he ran on when he ran as president, when it came to No Child Left Behind, because it was peacetime. It was the end of the Cold War. And it was kind of like building America at home, makes a stronger and secure America abroad.
Yeah. And I remember I lived in, I went to like 2 or 3, I think it was a couple of years in Texas public schools. And it seemed like a decent education. Learned a lot about the Alamo. I do remember that most distinctly.
Yes. No. The thing I've talked about this with my dad because people always debate: is Texas the South or is it the West? And I'm like, Texas is just Texas,
Yeah.
because if you are east of East Texas is basically Mississippi, and then the Rio Grande Valley is basically Mexico, and then the western part, like El Paso, that kind of part, that basically there's a lot of parts that are similar to like New Mexico and Arizona. But yeah, no like Texas is. I mean, it was part of the Confederacy, but you have to remember. They didn't want to be part of the Confederacy initially, and then they kind of joined on the other reason. Like Stephen Austin was, Sam Houston. Like they didn't want it. They didn't want to join the Confederacy. They were kind of wrong for the right. They were right for the wrong reasons because they still wanted Texas to be a slaveholding state. So.
Yeah, definitely. If you're ranking like top 5 multiple states within a states, they got to be up there. New York has to be up there.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah, even Virginia, kind of a
Yeah,
candidate.
yeah, California. I grew up, after the 1999 finals, my family moved to Canada, California, and my God, if you look at, if you get outside of people are always like, how come California elected Ronald Reagan? I'm like, have you been to the Central Valley? Have you been to Bakersfield? Have you been to Orange County?
Yeah, and in California, from talking to people, like they teach you a lot about California when you're in California public schools. In Texas, I remember them talking a lot about the Alamo, and then you have the Alamo Dome here in '99.
Yes.
And I went to grade school right around then, mid-late '90s. I remember that Spurs team going on that run, and I remember, or it was fun to revisit in this game, that the comeback, the 17-2 run spurred by Sean Elliott. How important was he to you as a Spurs fan, his whole arc?
Oh, he's one of those people who gets forgotten now because because I think that people think about aside from Duncan and Robinson, but like people obviously think about Steve Kerr, who, if remember, Steve Kerr joined the Chicago Bulls after that, and that game is the first one of Steve Kerr coming back after he'd been injured, but. Elliott, I feel like he gets forgotten about, but that, it was funny. I was looking at the YouTube comments and some of the highlights, and people are like, this is the beginning of the Spurs. This game is the beginning of the Spurs dynasty. And yeah, because again, Duncan was not particularly great from the perimeter, but Sean Elliott just pops 3 after 3. And then there's one point where he misses a 3, and Bob Costa says, oh, this is Sean Elliott's first miss from the 3-point line. They don't get that comeback and that Memorial Day miracle run without Sean Elliott just consistently hitting his 3-pointers in that round.
Yeah, and we come down to the conclusion here. Down 8 in the final 2 minutes, the Spurs are, and Sean Elliott hits a 3 to bring him closer.
Yes.
The Portland was able to keep the Spurs. The Spurs nearly came all the way back earlier, but Rasheed Wallace is hitting jumpers from outside. This is great players making great plays down the stretch. But that Spurs defense putting the clamps down, 52-34, and toward the end it would be Portland up 85-83 for the inbound. That's 33 points allowed in what is the span of most of the second half by the Spurs defense. How much did that team make you appreciate good and resilient, adaptive defense?
Oh, that was just incredible defense, and also, and again, I gotta say the Blazers defense that entire game, especially the first half, was incredible. Their rebounding was top notch. But yeah, it really does go to what would, and I think it goes to what would epitomize the Spurs from 1999 all the way until 2014 when they win their last title, which is, teamwork. And I think that, where you had in the 2000s, of course, you have Shaq and Kobe, you have the Lake Show, which is very much a rehash of the Showtime Lakers in the 1980s. The Spurs would become very clean, very almost mechanical engineering style, almost militaristic style of basketball. that is almost egoless. Yes, you have Tim Duncan. Yes, you have David Robinson. Yes, you have NBA All-Stars like that. And yes, of course, you have Steve Kerr, who had just come from the Bulls and would go on to win five championships now as NBA coach of the Golden State Warriors. But it's more just about the sum being greater than its parts. And you see that because Mario Elie delivers. And of course, he was a journeyman before then. Avery Johnson, who would go on to be a journeyman afterward and would go on to be a coach as well. You have Steve Kerr, of course. You have Malik Rose hitting some free throws. Yes, you have Duncan and Robinson, but they're not the ones carrying the entire team on their back the way that, say, LeBron James in his 2016 title run does with the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, and resilient even through right before the inbound, the Memorial Day miracle. The Blazers actually get a rebound up with up one with under 24 seconds left. They foul, and then eventually the inbound. They choose David Stoudemire, who's 73% in the year, but in Toronto for 3 years, he was like a mid 80%, mid to low 80% free throw shooter. So not the worst choice. He only hits the front end.
Yes. Yeah, and then they miss, and that was that. I remember thinking,
hits the back end.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, okay, we're still like, even though I was worried, I was like, okay, we're still in play. There's still a chance for a miracle. I think I was praying when I was watching that game.
Yeah, he making only the back end of the two free throws. The Spurs called the timeout, get it on the other side of the court, and you have Mario Elie, who's helped the team become a little less pure engineering. Like early in the season, he's like, "Hey Duncan, let's show more emotion." Duncan would be lifting Sean Elliott up in the air minutes later.
Yes.
But here you have Kerr on the court. The announcers are like, "Hey, this is someone they're either going to go to or is going to be someone who draws the defense." How are you feeling in that moment? Where are you, and what's the emotion like in the room?
The emotion I'm feeling, it's the living room. My dad probably is an 8 queso because it's Texas. And we're watching, and then my sisters are probably on the couch. I'm probably on the couch. We're just completely shaken. We're completely still. Like it's probably, again, remind you, my sister and I are 7 and 8 at the time. Do you know how hard it is to get 7 and 8-year-olds to sit still? And then all of a sudden that it comes to that point, and then when Sean Elliott gets the ball, you're like, oh wait, like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna make it?
And Elie inbounds to Elliott on the side. Stacey Augmon sells out for the steal.
Yes.
9 seconds left, and the announcers afterwards are like, "Wait, there's so much time in the shot clock. Why did he shoot immediately?" But he did end up 6 for 7 at 3 that day. It seemed like the Blazers weren't like clueless. Great job by coaching by Dunleavy for that game. They weren't clueless to Elliott being the guy, but Rasheed Wallace peels off his guy pretty quick to try to help after they miss the steal. Only a sliver of daylight, and it goes down.
Yes, exactly. And again, Mike Dunleavy does a fantastic, it's one of those games where it's literally just up to chance. Like, I don't think if I were Dunleavy, I would have done anything differently as a coach that game, because again, they were up by double digits for most of the game. So I can't necessarily fault Dunleavy for any of his calls. I just think that Popovich knew when to call a timeout. Popovich knew when to sub in his players. Popovich knew when it was just impossible to get the ball to Robinson and Duncan, when to hand the ball off to someone else. It's not really anything mystical. It's not like anybody did anything wrong that game. It was just that things go right at the right time. And in the moment, again, it's when you have the momentum, and basketball is a game of momentum, especially in the 1990s. It was a game of momentum where if you just have a run, you just got to run with it. You just got to go with it.
Yeah. Popovich with a great timeout to keep the game from getting away and sub Sean Elliott in, I think it was the 4.5 minute mark.
Yes.
And Popovich doubling Damon Stoudemire, who was him dribbling and distributing, like driving and kicking to Rasheed Wallace was their most functional offense to that point. So he's doubling Stoudemire, leaving the inbounder open.
Yes.
And but I'm going to put the link to the call in the show notes. Costas and Collins do a great job, especially
Yes.
on that Elliott call, dribbling, getting
Yeah.
the one dribble down, keeping his back heels in the air in that shot, and then
Yeah.
followed by Portland's shot attempt. That must have been a tornado of emotions.
It was every emotion you could imagine feeling, I felt during that game. And going back and watching that game again, I watched it twice. And I know, even knowing what the outcome is, I'm still like, my heart rate goes up just from watching it, just from the kind of high octane, high tension. And the thing is, again, you could just hear when the Spurs are in that deficit, you hear just the fans booing or screaming. And then when they're down like 10 points, you hear on your headphones, again, I'm listening to this on headphones, you hear the screaming that there's a chance, they have a fighting chance. And I think this goes to what it really goes to what the San Antonio Spurs fan base is about. This is, again, the Spurs fan base at this point has just gone through so much, so many false starts, so many disappointments, so many letdowns. But say what you will about San Antonio. Again, I think a lot about how this most recent NBA final, whenever the Spurs would get into the finals, there would always be kind of like, does anyone care? San Antonio's kind of a mid-market. And then just like in the same respect, this last NBA final where it was the Pacers versus OKC, like it was still a well-watched NBA final because it was good teams and it was good basketball. And in the same way, I think that, the Spurs didn't get as much viewership as if it was the Lakers or whatever, but it was still great basketball. And I think it was again, I think now people recognize, that San Antonio Spurs team from 1998 to 2014 was incredible, but they never got the love that they deserved during their time, during that kind of dynasty run.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the Admiral was a star, beloved '92 Olympic team, but the Spurs itself, especially down the defense, I mean, it was always good. Late '90s, it was more a defense forward team. But the Admiral had the star power, so it's like an interesting, I guess, probably conversation at the time whether it'd be good ratings. But it's great that actually America was like, yes, give us some Spurs.
Yes, give us some Spurs, and again, Robinson was part of the 1992 Dream Team. Duncan would go on to be part of it. And again, my favorite thing about Tim Duncan is that, for those who don't know, he didn't initially want to be a basketball player. He wanted to be a swimmer. He was from St. Croix. He was from St. Croix Virgin Islands. And it was because of a storm ruined the pools and ruined all the swimming pools that he wound up getting into basketball. And again, like that NBA draft season that he got on was just so incredible. Again, and later they all got into the Hall of Fame around the same time. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Duncan. But like, if you just going back, and it was funny because I was watching a podcast with Garnett, and they asked who's one of the better trash talkers you wouldn't expect. He's like, Tim Duncan. He's like, you would never expect it, but like if he would steal from you, he'd be like, sorry, or nice try, or do it again. It wasn't like
different kind of diabolical.
Yeah, different kind of like he wasn't Larry Bird. Like Larry Bird, in my opinion, is the greatest trash talker of all time. But it was a different kind of like, he's gonna just be like, the fact that he's so casual about it would just get in the heads of someone like Garnett, who was also a great trash talker.
And the Spurs hold up on that final possession, up one at that point.
Yes,
Elie hits the three, and they double Stoudemire, so they got to go to Jim Jackson, who had a few important buckets down the stretch.
Jimmy Jackson, yeah.
But you got him against Elliott with David Robinson helping in the baseline, not the position you want to be in. Pop cooked there, and then Elliott with the block.
Yes.
Walt Williams, the last gasp, and Spurs win.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, of course, there's Duncan holding up Sean Elliott, which again, very rare to see Tim Duncan that emotional. But that was really, and then of course that entire season they sweep the They sweep the Blazers. And I remember at the time there was a joke that they needed to use vacuums in the Alamo Dome so that they could sweep, because it was like they were so superstitious that it would stop them from sweeping. But like literally there were shirts that say Spurs sweep around San Antonio.
Yeah, and on the broadcast, I mean, Costas was not holding back. He's like, this is devastating. Like, this could not be more devastating.
Yeah. And again, just incredible. This is why he's the GOAT of broadcasting. Bob Costas just gives the best kind of commentary call, throwing off stats and saying like just how big this is. And it really does. Again, that really is a sea change, because again, I think what it does is there was really after the strike and after Michael Jordan retired, there was really a question of were people going to care about basketball in the NBA with Michael Jordan gone? But that showed that, again, you had a great Portland Trailblazers team. The Spurs, the series before, had played a Los Angeles Lakers team that would come into their own the next season. And it showed that, and then of course there's the NBA Finals series with the New York Knicks that is also great in Madison Square, where the Spurs win in Madison Square Garden. And again, it just shows that it's the rise of the West. And that this is really good. It's the beginning of what I think. Even though it was 1999, technically, it's the beginning, I think, of what we see in the 2000s era with with Spurs, with the Lakers, with LeBron James, again later in 2007 when the Spurs play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Kobe Bryant, of course, Tim Duncan says like, you're going to own this league like in a few years, but thanks for giving us the win this time. Like it's the beginning of this really, the NBA that I watched as a teenager.